Is a new era born? Let's talk about Jurassic World Rebirth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back at the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we're going to be discussing or even debating Jurassic World Rebirth. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is. Movie recommendation time. So, guys, best recent thing that we've seen.
I don't have a best recent thing for this week, but I did watch Heretic a few months back, and I don't think I mentioned it as a best recent thing watched. And I can't remember if it came out this year or last year. I think it was like maybe early this year or last year, whatever. My recollection of it isn't perfect, but I do remember watching it on a flight, and I was like, "This is quite interesting." I actually quite like the concept of it. Good characters, good dynamic between the people in this movie. Really small cast. I think it was one that I had seen, and it was just like an interesting premise because it had sort of the whole background of religion and things like that, and I just kind of wanted to see how they tackle the subject. To my best recollection, I thought they handled it quite well. I actually think I quite enjoyed the movie. So not one that I watched recently, but one I watched in the past couple of months, and I think it's worth a watch for sure. I did enjoy myself when I was watching that movie.
That is one where I'm glad we didn't talk about it because, like, this whole debate of science versus religion or reason versus faith and all of that, I think that's really interesting. And there's some really interesting conversations to be had. But almost, like, movies almost never go there. They almost never have anything interesting to say. And they can almost never honestly present both sides of this and kind of honestly represent what the actual debate is and what and where people are coming from when it comes to that. So for that reason, I kind of stepped around it and kind of didn't touch it. But if it's good, then I might check it out.
I watched a series called Wolf Creek. So it was actually based on a movie. So it was actually a movie first. I've watched all of the movies. So then when I saw that there was a series on Amazon, I was like, oh, okay. So then I went on to it. And I don't think most people are going to like it because it is like, you can tell it's low, mid budget. However, it's fun. It's just, a serial killer. So obviously the film's mainly based on a serial killer, and he pretty much his targets are whoever he sees on the road. Is based in Australia. So yeah, but with this one, the series is pretty interesting because so the family ends up killing the daughter. Now is kind of like on the hunt for him, but she doesn't become like some sort of assassin type killer. She's like kind of like not even learning on the go. She just, she doesn't like, she's just kind of like trying to find the killer. But the way that she is, her character, the audience is like, okay, even when she finds him, like, what the hell is she gonna do? Because she hasn't really trained like that in a way. So she's pretty much just like I said, learning on the go in a way where she's just trying to survive. And what she's learning on the go is just trying to survive as well as seeking out the person that killed her family. So I think that was kind of like the fun of it. And yeah, like I said, I like Wolf Creek. So when I found out there was a series, I kind of just binged on it, and I liked what I binged on because it is what you get, especially if you've seen the film. So there's not much to the storyline besides that simple storyline. However, it's fun, good low budget fun.
So I watched season one of Mid Century Modern, which is a 2025 sitcom about these three middle-aged gay men who, after one of their friend dies, kind of reassess their lives and they decide to make a change, and that involves moving in together as roommates. And then sitcom plots kind of happen, and a lot of them are kind of based around being kind of gay in your 50s and various aspects. Like, one character is like a Mormon who loves the church and the church doesn't reciprocate and they kicked him out when he came out. There's another one who is kind of struggling with kind of no longer being as young as he used to be. Things like that, right? So there's all sorts of different plot lines here that are kind of equal parts sitcom silliness and quite crude in its humor as well, and also fairly heavy topics. So first of all, it's just intelligent, well written. If it was just a bunch of gay jokes, I would not really enjoy it. And there's a bunch of tropes in this that I kind of find tedious, but the humor itself is fairly intelligent and it's like an intelligent crudeness, or like it's smart dumb in the sense that it's a dumb joke, but a lot of thought went into constructing it. And then the other half is fairly heavy drama. So one example is that there's an actress in the cast who plays the mother of one of the main characters, and the actress died halfway into making the season. And so they retooled 2 episodes to kind of make it a eulogy for her, where they kill off the mom as a character, and then there's a funeral and there's a grieving process, and that is kind of a tribute to the actress who actually died. And the entire thing is very heavy, very heartfelt, very, very intelligent, very emotional. And each of these individual pieces should not be my thing, but it's probably one of the smarter and more sincere comedy dramas, just stories that I've seen come out in like this year, at least in the last 2 years. Also notably, one of my not so much pet peeves, but questions is why no movies and no shows are acknowledging that the pandemic happened. And this has an episode in which they all test positive for COVID, and so they are stuck in their house for an episode while they kind of wait out the quarantine or the self quarantine. And that is basically a bottle episode where it's just three people, sitting on a couch feeling sorry for themselves and kind of just acting. And I think this is the first. It's not the first time I've seen a COVID plot, but it's. I can count them on one hand, and that was kind of interesting that the show just went there. And it doesn't say anything big. It's just a reality that sometimes you just get COVID and you just have to stay home for a week. It might be the second or third time I've seen a show acknowledge this reality, and it's interesting. Like, it wasn't just about that. It was like it forced three characters who didn't want to be in the same room to be in the same room, right? Like that's the setup. But I kind of perked up a little bit the way they mentioned COVID, and I'm not used to movies doing that or shows doing that. And the show is not good because of that, but it's like stuff like this where I said, oh, this is a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit smarter than I would expect out of like a silly sitcom. So that's why that's my recommendation for the week.
Well, looks like it's time for the main event. Danny G, please, can we have one of your synopses for Jurassic Park? Well, hold on. Jurassic Park New World. Wait,
oh no, I'm
Jurassic
keeping this
World
in.
Rebirth.
Jurassic World Rebirth. Okay, sorry. Danny G, can we please get one of your synopses for Jurassic World Rebirth?
So Jurassic World Rebirth is a sequel to the Jurassic World franchise and also a soft reboot of that franchise, where it kind of ignores the second and third movies, so the last two movies. So it's yet another side quel soft reboot. You need a flowchart to understand what counts and what doesn't kind of movie. The story essentially follows this company that has decided that they need DNA samples from 3 dinosaurs that live on this tropical island in order to make a heart disease drug. And so they hire a bunch of mercenaries to go into this forbidden zone and obtain these samples. At the same time, a family is on a boat trip in the same region who get attacked by dinosaurs, and they are rescued by the mercenaries. And so these two groups kind of end up on this island that used to contain a research facility that did a lot of the research that went into the original Jurassic Park. And so now they have to obtain the samples and have to make it to the extraction point while at the same time talking about healthcare. So what did we think of Jurassic World Rebirth, The Reckoning?
Now, I don't... God. I don't hate the movie, but this is not a good movie. There's so much WTF. This person should be dead in this movie. It's not brave enough. It's not bold enough to make any, big decisions in this movie. The whole aspect of throwing the family in, like 50 minutes into the movie, when they were never really mentioned, never really a thought, and then all of a sudden we have this family that are on a sailing boat in a region in and around where there's dinosaurs when it's clearly a no-go zone. It's a forbidden zone. But somehow the family is in this area and they are maybe like the only family that aren't aware that they shouldn't be in these waters. There's just too many dumb things that happen in this movie. I think it's a movie that is hampered by its genre, or, it's not by its genre. It's hampered by its need to be family friendly and its need to be a crowd pleaser, because at the end of it, nothing ultimately happens that is of interest in this movie. Even the bad guy in this movie, it's like, why, if you have all this money, if you have access to all these resources and you're paying these people for, to go on this mission, why are you there? Why are you part of this mission? The only reason you're there is to be the bad guy and to eventually get your comeuppance at the end of the movie. And sorry, there's this one scene where they try to force some type of like backstory for the characters to try and make you care, to try and make you feel anything for the characters. And I was just sat there and I was like, wow. And it was just like, oh, this happened to me. And oh, woe's my life. And, this is why my life is hard and this, that, and the other. And it's just like, okay, like you could have done this in a much better way. You could have added this depth to the characters in a much better way. And then, the characters kind of just like flip flop in terms of, their morality and what they value just on a dime, and it's just none of it really makes sense, and it's just pretty much an awful story with some just like decent dinosaur stuff in there. And again, I'm not the target audience for having dinosaurs run rampage in a movie, so it didn't really hit like it probably did for other people that do like dinosaurs and do like those type of movies. But for me, it was just like, okay, terrible story. I'm not really that interested in the dinosaurs. So
That scene where they talk about their motives for taking the mission reminded me of that scene in Rebel Moon where they're sitting around our table to compare background stories. It's not quite that bad, but it's kind of drinking from the same well, right?
yeah, no, exactly. That's a perfect example of it.
I'll be honest with you. If I was to do a top 10 film list of 2025, I think this would go number 7. I don't know what's going on, or if I don't know what the like general consensus is when it comes to this film, or I'm saying opinion. However, for me, I hope it's mine, and mine is this film was really, really good. I feel like it's going to be one of my favorite films of this year. It gave me Alien Romulus vibes in terms of like the tension that it gave. It felt, this definitely wasn't family friendly. I couldn't imagine seeing children going and watch this film. That's the first thing that I thought of when, like, the set pieces, when they were showing the set pieces, I was like, yo, this not only is it intense, but this is kind of like, if I was a kid, I might be low-key scared. Like, I was surprised they were showing certain scenes, especially when they were actually showing the scenes of the dinosaurs eating the people. I was like, because I think there's like, when it comes to the age certification for movies, there's, depending on what age it's given is because of certain criteria, like if it fulfills certain criteria. So I think blood and gore is one of them, right? So if it's proper gory and bloody, then obviously it'll go under a certain age. So with this one, I don't know, what is it rated? Is it it's not PG, is it?
I'm not sure, but I did take my nieces and nephews to see this movie, and they all hated it just as much as I did.
How old are
kind of rubbish the movie. They're arranged. So actually, I took 5 of my nieces and nephews, and they range from about 7. Again, I'm gonna get this wrong, but like between the ages of 6 and 7, all the way up to the age of 18. And there's 5. There's 5 of them, so they're in between those ages. And they were very much having the same conversation of how dumb the movie was and why people were making dumb character decisions and things like that. And they weren't engaged with the movie at all.
Oh wow. Well, for me, if I was 6 or 7 watching that, I'd probably be a bit shook. I'd watch cartoon straight after. I don't know. I'm comparing this with the first one, and I enjoyed this one much better than I enjoyed the first one. This one was me. This one was, like I say, Alien Romulus. This, like, now, okay, cool. The storyline was simple. However, the way that they delivered the simplicity in the storyline with the visual spectacle and the set pieces, and obviously with the tension, I was like, and the performances, I like the performances. I don't know what people have beef with the woods. I like the family that they found. It just felt like an adventure. It felt like a survival, a group survival situation. And I love group survival movies. I like adventures mixed with adventure, and I like when it's mixed with horror. So that just gives me zombie apocalypse vibes. I freaking love The Walking Dead, and The Walking Dead incorporates all of those themes, you know what I'm saying, all of those elements. So this had all of that in this film, and that's one of the reasons why I really, really, really enjoyed this film. And I was so surprised because before knowing that we're going to go watch this film, I wasn't expecting much. I really wasn't. Even though I did kind of like the trailer, I said, oh, this is kind of giving me scary vibes, and I'm liking that. So yes, I really like this film. And yes, I do agree. It does have a very simple storyline, and there are some decisions where it is questionable, like, okay, that doesn't make sense. However, for me, I can't lie. If I watch all the Jurassic Park movies today, I would probably say this was number 1 for me out of all the Jurassic Park movies. So I borderline loved this film.
So when I was in the theater, there was like a 7 or 8-year-old behind me, like one row behind me. And in the first half, she was confused and kept asking her parents to explain the plot to her. And in the second half, she was outright crying because she couldn't handle the action. And on both counts, I was right there with her. And then when the parents removed her because she just wouldn't calm down, I kind of wanted to go with them. So that's my review.
Flip it, oh man. I can't, it's not that even I can't believe that you guys hated it so badly, but damn, not even so bad. Okay, no, let me say that about you. Lot didn't hate, well, it seems like Daniel might have hated it so badly. However, you said it's a bad film, but cool. let's just start off what didn't work for you, and let's go from there.
Okay, where do we start? So a whole bunch of stuff in the beginning is kind of just maintenance to undo the damage of the last two movies, right? Where we have to explain why dinosaurs aren't all over the place. And we kind of have to kind of wind back the status quo to where you have to go to exotic locations to see dinosaurs. So there's already like 20 minutes, 25 minutes are spent on this. Also, they keep trying to convince us that people would get tired of dinosaurs. And I understand that after 30 years, there would be reduced interest, right? Like the initial hype would not be around anymore, but people still go to zoos, they still go to see lions and elephants and all of that. I do not believe that people would get tired of seeing a T-Rex. That's been like an idea in the Jurassic World franchise. I think it's since the first one. They keep bringing it up, and I just don't believe it. And it's at least at minimum, it's overstated. In addition to that, I think the characters are paper thin. There's no personality to them at all. I think the action, like some of it is quite good. Like I liked the mosasaur attack where it attacks the boat, and there were a few here and there where I said, oh, yeah, okay, this looks pretty cool. This is exciting. I don't think I watched the second and third Jurassic World movies. Watched the first one, so this whole like the current generation of dinosaurs is not something that's overdone for me. So seeing just a mosasaur attack a boat, I enjoyed it, and the flying dinosaur, what's it called, Quetzalcoatlus, that look cool. In general, I think there's a whole bunch of cool looking dinosaurs, and I wish they would do that instead of these mutants that are kind of tired. That idea is kind of tired. So characters are flat, have only most bare bones motivation. A lot of the action is really bad, where the dinosaurs are exactly as fast as the plot requires them to be. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. And it kind of takes the tension out of everything that happens. The worst one of this was the T-Rex river scene, where they kind of acquire this boat and a T-Rex attacks them, and it capsizes the boat, and they kind of have to hide behind some rocks, and the two rocks are exactly as wide as the head of the T-Rex. So it can stick its head through it and kind of snap at them, but it cannot actually go around it. It can't go over it. It can't push it out of the way. They're absolutely safe, but there's a dramatic scene where there's a T-Rex jaw kind of clawing at them. And then every time it tries to bite them, it just misses. But it's not really consistent, where it's always like a centimeter short of where the characters are. And once you see this, there's no tension at all. There's no chance that first of all, there's no chance that any of them are going to die anyway, but it's still the movie's job to create an illusion that these characters are really in danger. And it breaks that completely because of how it's choreographed. The way it's structured and how the dinosaurs go after the characters is just so transparently calculated. It's like a theme park ride, right? Yes, you get started, but that's it. Like at some point your brain catches on that you're not actually in danger. And that is kind of what most of the action scenes in this movie are.
The worst offense of it for me was the family's boat when the water dinosaur, I'm not going to repeat its name, when the water dinosaur flips over the boat. Well, I mean, firstly, when you got, the dinosaurs with a fin, and it's described in the movie as they're doing the hunting for the bigger dinosaur, essentially, for him to attack. So then they come in, they capsize the family's boat, and then don't attack the family and don't try to eat the family. But then when the crew's there, it then starts jumping at people and conveniently takes only the people that are deemed to be bad, grabs them.
Yep.
Everyone else survives, and then you have that one girl at the end just for dramatic effect that someone else needed to die, but she was safe on shore, had like the gear that they needed, and then didn't hear the dinosaur coming up behind her, and then was just taken and dragged just to add some type of drama or effect. And then, like you said, for the rest of the time, there just isn't that same level of tension because nothing's going to happen, because you have the guy peeing, the little girl's boyfriend peeing, and the dinosaurs creeping up to him, and then the bird dinosaur comes and takes that dinosaur and just leaves him alone. And it's just like stuff like that. It's like, okay, I get you're trying to create tension. And this is what I was saying in my initial review, is that because it's a family friendly movie where nobody's going to die pretty much, or everyone that is deemed to be, a safe character, like the family or the protagonist in this movie, because they're not going to die, there just isn't that level of tension, and there isn't that level of risk in the movie at all. because it's not safe for sort of families to see it or whatever. And it was just like whatever. And then Daniel mentioned about like the T-Rex scene. There's just like so many examples of it. Even with that T-Rex scene, you see the T-Rex swim in the water and it's faster than the boat they're in, gets in front of them, and then I can't remember what happens, but they manage to kind of get away and they end up in the water. But you've already seen how quick the T-Rex is in the water, but it goes back on land and then just like starts snapping at them from land and trying to get them, and it's just like, okay, cool. Like it just doesn't make sense at all.
And it's the movie's job to make you forget this, right? And it just didn't. It was so calculated. One other thing I wanted to get to was this entire story, like just listing all my grievances, right? The entire thing about the healthcare aspect, where the company wants to use these samples to make a heart disease drug that has the potential to save tens of millions of people, but they're going to charge for it, right? And much of the world is probably not going to be able to afford it. And so there's this whole thing about, should we give it to the company that's paying us 10 million each to procure these samples, or should we walk away from that money and give it to just the world, make it open source? Principle, fine story to have, right? But there is no attempt made to make this relevant to the characters or to create an actual dilemma for the characters other than they would like the money. The story is not built around this question, right? They don't discover anything throughout the movie that would change their calculation. They don't really have reasons for choosing what they choose in the end. And the movie isn't really about that. It's very much the definition of tacked on. It's like, how can we make it seem like this movie is about something? Let's talk about healthcare for a little bit. That's kind of it. Like, and there's no real treatment of the topic. There's no, like, I'm not even talking about like this is not John Q, right? Like a few weeks ago we talked about John Q, and that movie is all about what do you do when the healthcare system fails you, and that talks about things like affordability and whatever. All fine topics to talk about. I just do not believe that this movie is about this, because it's not woven into the story and it's not baked into the characters. And there is no real character arc or decision point where we see a character change because of the experiences they have, and that leads them to make a different choice, where they maybe start out wanting the paycheck, and then in the end saying, you know what, let's make this open source. That honestly, like, I'm very jaded when it comes to stuff like this. Like, I expect this from movies on some level, that they don't treat these topics seriously and that they don't put effort into actually being thoughtful and insightful. But usually it's at least part of the story. And here it's not. Here it's just purely sprinkled on top. And that, honestly, I was actually surprised by. We are reaching levels of half-assery that I didn't think were possible. And they were so busy asking whether they could that they never stopped to ask whether they should.
Yeah. No, I have to agree with all of that. What confused me as well was the characters' decisions to be heroic, because they were so concerned about money, and they're deemed to be mercenaries. And again, all the connotations that come with, mercenaries are all about something, the paycheck. They don't care about anything else. They're, really self-centered, etc. And they're really motivated by money, and they come up with this elaborate scheme to double the pay that they're meant to receive from this job. And then you have them just on a dime flip to being heroic, where one, they have to go save this family's boat, which is, however many miles in the opposite direction to where they need to get to for the mission that they're on. And then two, it was like Scarlett Johansson's character in this, in how she just kind of, for me anyways, there wasn't that internal conflict about, this has been my life up until now. All I've cared about is the money and doing these missions and going from one mission to the other, and, getting just enough money to, live a certain life. And this was meant to be, one big paycheck for me. But there isn't that internal struggle of, I'm sacrificing this one last big paycheck to do the greater good, essentially. There wasn't enough character depth in there for me to really understand why she made one choice over the other in this particular movie, which I just kind of found really, really frustrating, really jarring as I was watching this movie. And every time that they were trying to do the heroic thing, and every time that they were trying to enforce that pharmaceutical guy was the bad guy in this movie, it was just like, I don't know, we're just going down a trope. We're going down what the characters are expected to do, as opposed to what the characters would think and actually, how they would react in certain situations. It's more writer-led as opposed to character-led.
Yeah, it feels like checkpoints, right? Like, okay, we have some motivation at the start to explain why we're going to this place. Then we go to the place, then we're at the place, and then we encounter some dinosaurs, and then we survive. That's literally the plot structure. And then we inject moments into this to fill up the runtime. Like, that's literally what happened. While we're talking about character motivations, one really fun one was what's the jerk's name? The boyfriend, Xavier. So he's a complete moron, right? A completely insufferable idiot, right? Who can't even be bothered to like take his shift at the wheel, right? His initial turning point is when Teresa goes overboard and he jumps after her, which made sense to me. But then a little bit into the sequence where they're trekking through the island, first the father kind of thanks him for saving his daughter, and he just blows him off completely, like, whatever, old man. And then a couple of scenes later, he has decided to completely change his life. He's decided to be mostly selfless and responsible and caring about others. I did not see a moment that would lead this character to change so rapidly. You might think that going through these kinds of experiences, he would learn the importance of other people or of family or his found family or whatever, right? Where he kind of has to make a decision to do something that's difficult or unpleasant or dangerous, and he initially doesn't want to do it because his instinct is to be a selfish little shit. But then he decides to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do, right? Like that would be called a character arc, and it seems like that should be part of the story, right? But it's not. He just changes completely from one scene to the next. And this ties into this thing I've been complaining about many times now, where we see a character having changed, but we don't see them change. We don't see the events that lead up to that person having to make a change and then making, like, agonizing over it and then making the decision to change. And this happens with Xavier here as well. So like there's like several characters, right? Xavier is like this, but also the mercenaries are like this, because again, we don't have like a moment where they really realize, oh, we're doing the wrong thing. What do we do? And then they make the decision to walk away from the paycheck, which is all they've ever wanted, in order to benefit humanity as a whole, right? So that's two instances of characters changing rapidly to be the exact opposite of what they were before, but there's no reason for it.
For me, it's inexcusable because last week we talked about F1 and we didn't 100% agree on, you know, the characters and that character arcs that they went on. But for me, there was enough there in the characters and enough there in, you know, how they were at the start of the movie versus what they were at the end of the movie, and sort of what kind of fed the change in those characters. And again, that's just like another summer blockbuster movie where, you know, the story beats are going to be exactly what they are in the movie. It's a very, you know, crowd pleasing movie. It's a very safe movie, but it at least tries to inject character and character development into its characters. Whereas I feel like this just kind of takes it for liberty and just, you know, assumes that you're going to be on, you know, along the ride for the character changes that it makes on the flip of a dime in this movie, without really the movie putting in the work or taking you on that journey with it. And again, you know, it would have been easy for them to do it with certain characters. Like Mahershala Ali's character in this movie talks about, you know, the pain of losing a child and the effects that it had on his marriage or his, you know, his wife. And then you have kids in this movie, you have like children in this movie, etc. But they completely separate them for the majority of the movie. They're not around each other. There isn't that learning for his character on, you know, the acceptance or whatever. Like it could have been, you know, whatever character journey. It could have been like an acceptance of, you know, losing a child, or, you know, making sure that he was protected this time round, or whatever the case might be. But there was an opportunity to do it there, but the movie decided that they would be apart for 90% of the movie and then kind of bring them back towards the end. So it's just wasted opportunity there, wasted potential in his character as well.
I just had an idea for how to fix the movie. Kill Isabella at the 50% mark.
Which one? The little girl,
Yeah,
the youngest
like,
one?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pet dinosaur too. And the reason for this is not just because it would be funny. Like, just watching the discourse, if they did this, would be the most entertaining thing. But honestly, like, we have this whole thing. We have the family, and then we have the mercenaries who only care about themselves, and they care about each other insofar as they are a team and they need each other to succeed. But they don't think beyond the paycheck, right? So now put those two together. First of all, it didn't really matter in the story that the mercenaries became responsible for the family, right? The biggest decision point that happens in the movie is when they get the distress call and Kincaid pulls rank and says, I am the captain, and this is now a search and rescue. Never mind that they could have just dropped off the family at the nearest island and then go back to their mission, because like what's the rush? Like, these dinosaurs aren't going anywhere. There's no rivals who might get there first, right? If they had been another corporate team that's also going after the samples, and if they don't get there first, then they lose the race. Like, that would have been a reason to not waste time. But as the story is set up, they should have taken the detour. And like, there's no ticking clock here, right? But that moment where they get the distress call, some people say, oh, we should go help them because that's what we do. And then others say, no, like, I'm sure there's Coast Guard is already on the way. It's not our job. You know, we're not going to jeopardize this mission on the off chance that we are the only ones who heard this, right? So that is kind of the closest there is to an actual argument or debate in this movie. But I think if you confronted these mercenaries who only care about themselves and their bank account with a family that genuinely cares about each other, and that are so good that they even made somebody like Xavier care, then they lose somebody and they are completely paralyzed with grief. They cannot go on. They're barely functioning because they just lost their sister, their daughter. And now the mercenaries see this and they kind of are reminded of what they've forgotten, right? About how important family is, about how important other people are. It's not simply about survival. It's also about the people you care about. Now, call me crazy if that happened at the 50% mark of the movie, and then they had a decision to make, and they made the decision to screw over the company that is responsible for the kid dying, and they're gonna do it by leaking the data that's needed to make this drug. Would that have been a better story?
Definitely would have been more interesting, in my opinion. It definitely would have had more stakes. But again, that is one thing that would never happen in these movies, because you just can't kill kids, and you can't kill the cute dinosaur or character that's, you know, going to be there to sell merch and sell toys and stuff like that. So definitely couldn't do it, but it would definitely lead for a better story. And that's why I say these movies, they're hampered by needing to be family friendly. They're hampered by needing to be safe, because you can't make bold decisions in these movies. You can't take the risk and tell a story that has some type of grief or some type of tragedy in it. Because again, for me, biggest sin was Mahershala Ali's character again at the end of the movie, where he's sacrificed himself. He's got the flare and he's, you know, dragged the dinosaur away from the main group, and they're trying to get away. And you think he's died, but he hasn't. Like, somehow, it's not explained, somehow he gets away from the big dinosaur that was
that was my main issue.
Somehow Kincaid returned, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my main
Yeah.
But so it undermines the sacrifice. It makes no sense because there's no plausible way he could escape the T-Rex, the D-Rex, whatever it's called. And it doesn't really mean anything that he survived, right? Like it's not relevant to the story, right? It's just like, we like him, therefore we like that he survived. There's literally nothing else to it. And it's like, yeah, like at that point, I was already against the movie by the time this happened. And by that is the part that I actually took personally as a paying member of the audience. You have your heroic sacrifice, and it's probably the most interesting thing anybody has done in this movie, because it's it has actual consequences. And no, like, just throw it away for no reason, just for a feel-good moment. And it's not even like close, right? It's not like, oh, it's a coin flip and we hold our breath for a minute, wondering if he made it. No, it's certain death. He's literally baiting the D-Rex with a flare in like shoulder-high water. How did he get away? You know what I mean? Like, it's the worst possible way to do this.
Jonathan, I kind of want to bring you in here, because this is meant to be one of your...
Yes, defend yourself.
Yeah,
I was waiting for
please.
you to finish your rant, because I have a few things to say.
We could have
more.
been going for a while. Yeah, we could have been going for a while. So let you jump in. And
In terms of one of the points that you guys made before, I disagreed with the whole illusions of danger, which was done terribly. I thought it was done really good. I think the closeness to fatality, they executed that really, really well. Even though, like you mentioned, the whole thing with the two rocks and then obviously the dinosaur, it was pretty much predictable with the two rocks and the dinosaur head not fitting in between that. I just think, yeah, cool. That was a bit like, okay, you could tell that was going to happen. However, like I said, with the whole closeness to fatality, like you knew that they weren't going to die. However, just what can you do with the tension and the suspense to still make it seem like they are gonna die, and I think they did manage to do that. For me, like I was tense. I was tensed up, even though I knew that they couldn't have died. I was still tensed up. Especially the scene with the boyfriend. Even though the boyfriend, I kind of like the boyfriend. Even though there wasn't really a progression to his character arc, I still think he was a necessity in the film when it comes to the whole comedic value of things. And he wasn't an underdog, but you could tell there had to be something about him in terms of why he was the way that he was, because you're being introduced to your girlfriend's father and you're treating him like you're kind of treating him disrespectfully. And the fact that the daughter's allowing it is okay, there has to be more to this guy's story. And obviously the little conversation that he had with the dad in terms of like he's surprised that his daughter's even with him as well. And I was like, okay, I can believe that. And so the dad kind of had, even when he saved the daughter, I was like, oh, okay, he's giving me more of a reason to kind of like him in a way, but at the same time, I don't like him, and I kind of liked that. So he did kind of produce that conflict within me. I'm like, okay, he's kind of annoying, but at the same time, I kind of see why the daughter's with him, and the things that he did was a bit commendable, and just his incorporation in the movie I liked, especially the scene where he's taking a piss and then the dinosaurs behind him. That I don't know what that specific dinosaurs they are, but there was a dinosaur creeping up on him, and then you got the flying dinosaur just comes in and obviously kills those dinosaurs. That scene I really liked, but in terms of the illusions of danger, I thought that was done really, really well. Especially I really like that scene where they're getting chased by the T-Rex. I do get it, like it was a bit inconsistent. However, the excuse that I would give for it is like you never know. Animals are very like they're unpredictable. Like especially like remember the gorilla remember the video back in the day where there was a little boy that ended up falling where the gorilla pit was, and then like they ended up killing the gorilla, but you know what I'm saying?
Harambe.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't know what animals are gonna do. Do you know what I'm saying? Same with dinosaurs. Sometimes they'll play with their food. Sometimes they'll go straight for the kill. So for me, I said that scene was that was really tense. Also in terms of the characters, kind of like transforming from money motivated to now caring for the world. That transformation there. First, I was like, yeah, you are right, Daniel. So you guys' points are valid. That kind of came out of nowhere. However, I thought about it and I said, okay, no, it didn't come out of nowhere. It was just kind of lazily done. And I'm kind of like, I can forgive that because like I said, the storyline is pretty simple. And I think it was shown that they did have an empathetic side to them with the introduction of the family. So obviously when they found out that the family were stranded, there was the whole discussion between the team whether or not they should go and save the family or whether or not they shouldn't. So then obviously Duncan and Zoe being on the side of let's go and save the family, even though this pushes back our time of actually doing what we need to go and do. That was a hint. Also, another hint was with when Duncan and Zoe had a conversation about pretty much their personal life. Obviously, Duncan, you found out, I think he lost his son or daughter. I think it was his son. And then Zoe, I think her mum passed away or something like that. So, but during that conversation, you could tell they had the empathetic and human side. So I wasn't really too surprised that they were the only two. Well, I think, they were the only two that wanted to go and save the family, whereas the others wanted to go and, pretty much go for the money. That was a hint, and it was kind of like a justification on why they switched up when it came to should we still do our mission, which is get what we need to get, which is the dinosaur blood or something like that, DNA, and get the 10 million, or should we make this accessible to the general public? So I kind of understood how they came to that decision and came to that transformation, even though it was lazily done. I will agree. It was lazily done, and they should have kind of like done more with that, especially their storylines, to kind of make that decision more justifiable. However, they did give hints before that. And the hints that were given before that was pretty early on in the film. It was like 20 minutes or 30 minutes early on in the film. And the film was like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So they fulfilled that criteria in terms of the justification of their decision. What else did you guys mention? I think you guys mentioned a lot.
Just to talk about that part. So you are right that there are things seeded throughout the movie where they talk about the idea, and they talk about, oh, I lost family recently, whatever, right? Those are all pieces of the puzzle. But what's missing is the biggest piece of the puzzle, which is their reason for having to make a decision, and then their reasoning for actually making that decision and walking away from the thing that they initially thought they wanted, right? Which is the paycheck. They simply just decided, like they talk about it twice, I think, throughout the movie, and they can just kind of just float the idea. Say, no, I really like getting paid. Let's not do this. And then at the very end, when they're on the boat, they just decided, Like the corporate guy is dead, and they have the sample, and they are sailing off into safety. Although they still have to get past all the mosasaur and these all these others. It's not clear why they actually are safe, but anyway, they kind of just decide to make the sample public, which is by itself like a fine thing to do, right? But their reasoning is missing, and the need for our decision is missing.
I can agree to that because I can't really find a reason. However, in terms of their reason, I think that is foreshadowed in terms of them saving the family, because already, like I said, they had a mission, and that mission was to continue straight on. And if they didn't continue straight on, then they have to turn back, and turning back would push them back like a couple of hours, right? So even though they like they said we can go back to save them, so they could have still fulfilled the mission the way that they wanted to, the way that the whole crew wanted to, and save them potentially, but they knew the dangers of that would be they could still end up dying because there's still dinosaurs in that sea. It foreshadowed the transformation because they didn't choose their personal greed over doing what's right in the situation where they had to go save the family. So in the situation now where they're faced with the either 10 million or save the world, that's already kind of like they showed the characteristic, and they showed that they have that empathy in them to make that decision to show that transformation.
I just don't think it's nearly enough. Like there needs to be extra plot that guides the character along that thought process and that decision making
Yeah, I can
process,
agree
and
with
that
that.
was entirely missing.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, all right. Moving on. One other thing I found comically bad was the teleporting Titanosauruses. I think that's what they're called. So when they go get the second sample, they leave the jungle and cross into this valley that is basically just shoulder high grass, right? But as far as the eye can see, it's open space, right? And they are trying to find the biggest dinosaurs that have ever lived. You can see down the entire valley, and there's nothing there. And the camera turns, and there's two giant Titanosauruses 10 meters away. Then they get the sample from them, and the camera pans again, and there's hundreds of them, kind of just a giant herd, walking down the valley. So this, like, it's not like there's a logic problem here, right? It's more about the way that sequence is constructed is completely careless. Also, one other problem is that as they search for the Titanosauruses, they talk about how I think it's something about at least the dinosaurs can't hide in this open grass, right? But then somebody says, but whatever is hunting them might, or something like that, right? They foreshadow that there are predators out here who feed on the Titanosauruses, right? Then is not paid off, right? So they simply don't. That simply doesn't happen. It's just like they just find the Titanosauruses, get the sample, and leave. That's a smaller problem. The larger problem is just that there's no build up to it. They don't see the herd from a distance, and then they get closer, and then maybe they talk about how to get closer without spooking them, or like something. But like in the original Jurassic Park, like there's a real interaction between the dinosaurs and the humans, right? So the dinosaurs react to the humans, and the humans react to the dinosaurs. And in that sequence, that is completely missing. Like they just walk up to them, including the scientist who kind of pets one and just starts laughing. And even though the humans are tiny next to the Titanosauruses, they should still notice them, and they should still avoid them because they don't know if they're going to be a threat or not. So it's like that entire sequence is just really shoddy because nobody reacts to anybody else.
Can I tell you the most egregious thing about that particular scene as well? Is the
Mhm.
very start of the movie, they clearly state that people's interest in dinosaurs are waning. People just don't care enough about the dinosaurs anymore. And what do they do in that scene? They play the most dramatic music and, do this long take of these dinosaurs and how grand they are and sort of them interacting with each other to try and show the wonder and the awe of the dinosaurs. And the entire time in my mind while I was watching that, I was like, you literally just said at the start of the movie is that people don't care about these dinosaurs anymore. And you even have a person that studies dinosaurs who probably has had access to dinosaurs back where he came from. I'm very sure this is not the first interaction, especially if there, have been some in the cities and stuff. This is probably not your first interaction with these dinosaurs. And I get this is probably one of the biggest ones that you saw. I mean, the one that we did see in New York was the one that was stuck under the bridge, was quite large as well. But I get this is probably one of the biggest ones you saw. But the whole time I was watching it,
Yeah.
I was like, you've just completely contradicted what you were saying at the start of the movie, and you're trying to get us to care in the audience about these dinosaurs and sort of the amazement of them. But again, in the other breath, you're saying that people don't care about these dinosaurs and they just kind of whatever. And I would just be like, this dramatic moment or this, this moment of awe and wonder just doesn't land because that was just stuck in my brain as I was watching it.
I won't disagree with this point that you guys are making, so I ain't got no rebuttal for it. I do agree that scene was something which kind of like flew under the radar for me until Daniel mentioned it. So I was like, oh yeah. Because even when he touched, actually, that's a lie. Even when he touched the dinosaur, the excuse I gave for it was that he's very, very small, so maybe the dinosaur doesn't feel it.
He also should have died. Like the whole time I was watching this movie, it was just a case of this person should have died here, this person should have died here. And for me, while he's petting the dinosaur, it's like one wrong movement or one scare to the dinosaur and he's completely crushed and he's dead, pretty much. So I don't know. I was just kind of watching it, and every time like you guys are like bringing up points, all that's in my mind is this person should have died. And honestly, the worst of it is just the family at the start. Even when they jump into the water, because again, they were trying to get to the more shallow water for whatever reason, even though the dinosaur still got that mercenary lady. But even when they jumped in the water, just, I don't know, they had some type of repellent that the dinosaurs just didn't want to eat them. I don't know, there was just like something off about that family where the dinosaurs just chose not to feed on them.
First of all, what are they called? Like the ones with the sails? I don't remember what they're called, but like the smaller ones, right? Like they could have just gone after them even in the shallow water, right? Also, they jump off the boat because the mosasaur can't follow them into shallow water. But they're not in the shallow water yet, and they're heading towards the shallow water, but they jump off the boat before they reach it. Am I crazy?
And it's not even shown like the crash is that bad. I mean, again, Mahershala Ali's character, I keep calling him, I don't know his official name in the movie, but his character just kind of holds on and braces for impact, and he's fine. No real damages, no scratches, no.
He's paced. He doesn't survive that.
In this movie, there's no
Yep.
danger that he's sort of faced, and it's just, I don't know, man. Should have died. Is all I say.
Yeah.
All I say to that.
I think the only realistic thing I found in this movie, just in terms of people behaving like people, was the French guy who was clearly fluent in English because he understood everything people said, but he still insisted on only speaking French. And everybody kind of just went along with that because that's just how he is. Like that was like I've experienced that. I've got some stories about that. That is how it goes.
Like I said, for me, I have excused this film for its simplicity and some of its inconsistency, mainly because of the way that it was delivered. It was a great spectacle, similar to Gladiators. I think in Gladiators the film was pretty simple. However, it was just a blockbuster. It was just a blockbuster movie with things that I really liked. Same with this one, for me personally. And I already said what it was. So I don't really have much to say when it comes to the rebuttal. When it comes to what you guys are saying, I do hear what you guys are saying, and it is very, very valid. However, I just think they fulfilled a lot of the criteria which you guys have problems with, but very loosely and very lazily. And yeah, there wasn't enough that was done, which I will agree with. However, I don't seem to have an issue with it. You know what I'm saying? I don't have a problem with it because it was just, I had fun, man. I had fun with this.
I just think spectacle and CGI spectacle is a dime a dozen. It's like every movie has it. And the ones that actually make you care and the ones that actually stick with you are the ones that are underpinned by characters you care about and story beats that kind of engage you. And if a movie breaks the illusion that there's real danger here, if it's not really about anything, if it doesn't have any big character moments, or if it's not driven by characters being on a journey or facing some kind of dilemma or having some big decision to make, like it's not a one size fits all, right? There's many different ways to tell a compelling story, but you have to pick one. And this movie simply didn't. It simply said, you know what, let's give people some CGI dinosaurs for 2 hours and people running away from dinosaurs, and that's it. There's nothing else to this. And it's made like over $300 million. We'll see how far it goes because it's heading into tough competition over the rest of the month. But reviews are mixed, but overall people are showing up for it. And I just feel like it would have been so easy to do something better. Even if it's tropey, even if it's, by the numbers, just put in like a decent character dilemma and have a character make a choice between the paycheck and the altruistic thing. Just do that right, and everything else there to support it. And in between, we get some cool dinosaur scenes and chases. And if that was there, then we would care more about the dinosaurs and stuff.
Or if you're not going to have that in your story, you have to make the set pieces and you have to make the action undeniable, like a Mission Impossible. Again, with like the submarine scene, like that's undeniable how great that scene is and how claustrophobic it makes you feel. And again, he's not in real danger, but you're there with him. Like that's absolutely undeniable for me as well. It's like things like John Wick, where the action is just like undeniable that you can forgive everything else because you're there just for that. But here, the dinosaur action for me is just things that we've already seen, and if not, it's stuff that just kind of like takes you out of the movie, like a T-Rex that can't pierce a inflatable boat, and it's just like, what the hell are we doing? Like T-Rex, the jaw is meant to be like one of the strongest things, and it's probably got some of the sharpest teeth, but it can't pierce an inflatable boat. But yeah, move on.
Yeah, I did like the mosasaur attack. I think that was probably the best one. And there's like bits and pieces here and there where I said, yeah, okay, this is neat, but nothing where I said, wow, this is cool. Like somebody really put some thought and effort into this. I did like how a lot of scenes kind of started with like an establishing shot, and then there's some creature in the foreground. Happens like 6-7 times, and I really like that, because it made the world feel more alive, and this kind of brought this idea home that we are not in a park anymore. This is like not a curated, sterile environment. This is like these things have been breeding for 17 years, and we're way beyond nature finds a way. This is just their habitat now, and it should be crawling with all sorts of creatures. I like that. So it's not all bad. It's more like, could you have just not half-assed it as much? A few more things I wanted to get into. What do we think about the reliance on the engineered dinosaurs? I think when Jurassic World introduced this idea that people are getting tired of dinosaurs, and so people are making bigger and scarier artificial dinosaurs, and that is kind of the next escalation. It is kind of what makes it unpredictable again. But like we're in the fourth movie in this, and kind of more than half of the dinosaurs in this are kind of these like bizarre Frankenstein creatures, right? So do we like this? Do we think we should just have T-Rexes and Velociraptors, or somewhere in between?
For me, somewhere in between. Don't make them look as hideous as they did in this movie, as like the D-Rex looked, because it's just not appealing to look at. And I get that was the whole point, was that these ones were just so ugly that they couldn't, put them in the park because no one would want to see them. But I don't know, it was just like it just looked ridiculous, and I didn't like it at all. And I know that things like the T-Rex and stuff are played out, but again, you have a wide range of dinosaurs that you can play with. You could have done something that's maybe a little bit different, and again, each of the dinosaur will have like unique characteristics about it, so that can play into how the characters are being chased and how they get away from the dinosaur. So I think I lean a little bit more into exploring the variety of dinosaurs that currently exist and some of the ones that have been mutated, but kind of going all the way, it didn't work for me. I don't know. This is just one more point that I want to say, and this is not related to this, and we'll kind of go back to this topic. But just where I knew the movie was doomed was the opening set piece. That was like the most pathetic set piece, where the guy's like eating the chocolate, drops the wrapper, somehow it goes into like the vent and shuts down the whole entire system, and I'm like, what in the Final Destination is going on here? Like, this is just such nonsense. Yep. It was short, it was quick, and it was crap. But go on.
For 2 days now, I've been racking my brain about what that reminded me of. And yeah, it's Final Destination. It's like a contrived coincidence, but it's not in a Final Destination movie. And as a result, it's just nonsense. Like, never mind the logic and the logistics of it, that this entire thing is so easy to shut down. Like Nedry is rolling in his grave, looking at this, saying, look, I at least tried. And you just ate a Snickers? You know what I mean? Like, talk about phoning it in. Like, Nedry had a plan. Say what you will about Nedry, he had an ethos, right? And this is just pure idiocy.
I don't know, Jonathan, do you want to... I feel bad because I feel like we've just bashed this movie. We should actually go back to...
I don't.
I was going to say, we should actually go back to Daniel's original question as well about, whether we should have more natural dinosaurs or mutated ones. I don't know, what's your opinion on that, Jonathan?
I didn't like the look of the D-Rex. However, everything else I was cool with. I think because obviously it's Rebirth, so it brings the story to another place, which it needs to go to another place, because you can't keep repackaging the same thing. So they attempted to try something new. I believe so. So it's not that I don't think it works, but I just didn't realize. I realized there was definitely a change. It was different, but I didn't like it. Didn't have a negative impact on my viewing experience. It was just that the D-Rex looked pretty. It's not that it looked ugly. It just didn't look too great. I was like, oh, okay, like that looks weird, but cool. I think just like the original dinosaurs, they looked better than the D-Rex. But in terms of like the newly mutated dinosaurs, I don't have an issue if the franchise ends up going in that direction. So I don't have a problem.
I just think the balance should be way more towards the real dinosaurs. Like that's ultimately what's cool about this franchise. Like the engineered dinosaurs kind of look like any movie monster, and they sound and act like any movie monster. And the cool thing about Jurassic Park and World is the dinosaurs, right? Like this is a world in which dinosaurs are running around. Like that's kind of just fallen by the wayside. I think they have a place, right? But they should be like very localized, and it should be driven by story. Like this is where kind of these mutants are, or where they kind of spread, or maybe the mutants are more aggressive than the real ones, and so they're beginning to displace the real dinosaurs, or something. You could add a story dimension to this, but instead we're just sprinkling them in because they look cooler, and they allow us to make bigger dinosaurs or more aggressive dinosaurs, or make them more monstrous or something. It just feels like a good idea 3 movies ago that has kind of totally run away from people. So yeah, it's not my favorite thing. I wanted to see more dinosaurs, like actual dinosaurs. All right, any other thoughts, or should we go to last thoughts?
I think I should go first. I think I should go first because I think Dan, your opinions are going to be pretty much similar. I definitely do hear where these guys are coming from. However, it actually surprisingly hasn't changed how I feel about the film, because a lot of the times when I do hear back on, other opinions, and obviously I realize why I missed out, you know what I'm saying, spot the nuances, I'm like, oh, okay, it definitely does change my opinion and outlook on the film. Sometimes a lot, sometimes just a bit. But for this one, I don't believe it has. I can't change the way that I felt about this film while I was watching. It was it was really good, man. I had a great time. It doesn't change the experience that I had when it comes to the tension I felt and the horror that I felt. I felt tense in certain moments, which I liked. It was a good tense, and that's something which I was surprised on feeling in a Jurassic Park movie, because I haven't read like. I don't know. I can't. To be fair, I can't remember the other films. I mean, the first film, yeah, there were times where it was not spooky but a bit scary. But I didn't feel as tense as I felt in this film, and I liked that feeling. I liked the feeling that it created when I was watching it. It created inside of me when I was watching this film. So overall, I think I'm gonna have to give this film a 7.5 out of 10, and I'm mainly basing this on my emotional connection that I had towards this film. I think that's what's kind of like emotionally I love this film. So that's where my high rating comes from. Like I feel like that's what movies are supposed to do. If a movie makes you feel good, then it did its job. So for me, this movie made me feel good. So that's why I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that you do like it, because I think it's got some pieces in there, some elements in there to be a good movie, because I didn't completely hate my experience with this movie. It's just, especially after watching F1 last week and how well I thought it handled itself as a, just a summer blockbuster and a crowd pleaser, in how it handled its story and its characters, given it's all simple. I feel like more of these movies that are just meant to be crowd pleasers just need to get the story a little bit tighter. They just need to have a little bit more to the characters. We're not, asking them to, add crazy depth to the characters, but just get your character from A to B in the most simplest way possible. That can be tropey, but makes sense for the movie and makes sense for the plot that's unfolding in the movie. Is my kind of big takeaway from this. Again, it's always handicapped on the fun that I don't really care for. Dinosaur action like that. It's not really my thing. I don't clamor for movies like this. I don't really care for movies like this. So it's really handicapped on that side. But then you then throw in a kind of really mediocre story with really weak character progression in there. It just kind of turns me off completely. So yeah, in that I can see why people would like it, and I can see why people would kind of go in there and just sort of ignore the bad aspects of the story and enjoy some of the dinosaur action in this. Like I can see it, but for me, it just didn't completely work, or didn't completely come together as I kind of hoped it would. So in that case, I would give it a I'm kind of stealing Daniel's flow here. I was going to say I would give it a looking forward to Superman next week out of 10, but officially I'll give it a 4 out of 10.
First of all, you can absolutely borrow my shtick. Like, I don't have any copyright on that. But also, I'm totally on board with some dinosaur action adventure. I'm actually into dinosaurs. I think in the modern day, we could do some cool stuff, if the story is in the right hands, that we couldn't do 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And I just think this is entirely phoned in. This movie purely exists because the last one made money. And I'm not against studios making money, right? But they have to give us something that entertains us. And I simply wasn't entertained because the story is nothing special, the characters are paper thin, and their choices make no sense. It squanders the illusion, at least for me, it squandered the illusion of danger. And also, none of the big set pieces are quite impressive enough, with one or two exceptions. But like overall, the dinosaur action is not that great. It's okay, it's good, it's not great. And if no part of the movie rises to actually being good, then I'm not entertained and I'm not impressed, and I'm not going to recommend it. So for that reason, that's a 5 out of 12 for me.
All right, guys. Well, you've heard it here first. Thank you very much for tuning into today's debate.
If you made it to this part of the video, of course, we appreciate you rocking with us. We appreciate your support throughout our journey. If you thought our conversation was as hideous as the D-Rex in the Jurassic World movie, you should probably tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys. We will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.